Hello, and welcome to Tale Talk English. Today's story is emotional, heartfelt, and full of love, secrets, difficult choices, and life-changing decisions. It will also help you improve your English listening and vocabulary through simple conversations and real-life emotions. As you listen, try to imagine every scene, every expression, and every feeling. This is the story of a woman who thought her husband was leaving her, but the truth broke her heart. Let's begin. My name is Amanda. I am 38 years old, and I have been married to my husband, Ryan, for 11 years. For most of those years, our life was peaceful. We lived in a comfortable apartment in a quiet neighborhood. It was not luxurious, but it felt like home. The living room had a large window that looked out over a small park where children played every afternoon. Ryan and I often sat by that window in the evenings and talked about our day. Ryan was 42 years old. He worked as a project manager for a construction company. His job was demanding, but he loved it. He was the kind of man who took pride in his work. Whenever he completed a difficult project, he came home excited to tell me every detail. I worked at a medical clinic as a receptionist. Every day I greeted patients, answered phones, and helped people feel comfortable before seeing their doctors. Our lives followed a simple routine. In the morning, Ryan made coffee while I prepared breakfast. Then we went to work. In the evening, we returned home, cooked dinner together, and talked about everything. At least, that was how things used to be. 3 months ago, something began to change. At first, the changes were small. Ryan started coming home later than usual. Instead of arriving at 6 o'clock, he sometimes arrived at 7, then 7:30, sometimes even 8. The first few times, I did not worry. Work can be stressful. Deadlines happen. Projects become complicated. That was what I told myself. But as the days passed, I noticed other changes. Ryan seemed distracted. Sometimes I would ask him a question, and he would stare into space before answering. One evening, we were eating dinner when I asked, "Did your meeting go well today?" Ryan blinked as if he had just returned from somewhere far away. "What?" "Your meeting," I repeated. "Oh, yes, it was fine." His answer felt short and distant. That was not like him. Ryan usually loved telling stories about work. That night, he barely spoke. The following week, something happened that made me even more uncomfortable. We were sitting together on the couch watching television when Ryan's phone vibrated. He looked at the screen and immediately stood up. "I need to take this." Without another word, he walked into the bedroom and closed the door. I sat frozen on the couch. For 11 years, Ryan had never hidden phone calls from me. Never. When he returned a few minutes later, I tried to sound casual. "Who was that?" He hesitated. "Just someone from work." Then he quickly changed the subject. A strange feeling settled inside my chest. The feeling only grew stronger over the next few weeks. Ryan spent more time on his phone. He answered messages late at night. Sometimes I woke up and found his side of the bed empty. When I walked into the living room, I would see him sitting in the darkness staring at his phone screen. Whenever he noticed me, he quickly locked the phone. I tried to ignore it. I tried to trust him. But my imagination began creating terrible possibilities. Was he hiding financial problems? Was he planning to leave his job? Or was there someone else? The last possibility hurt the most. I hated myself for thinking it. Ryan had never given me a reason to doubt him before, but when people start acting differently, fear fills the empty spaces where answers should be. One Saturday afternoon, I visited my friend Evelyn. Evelyn lived only a few blocks away. She was kind, wise, and always knew how to listen without judging. We sat together in her kitchen drinking tea. After a few minutes, she looked at me carefully. "Amanda," she said, "something is bothering you." I sighed. "Is it that obvious?" She smiled gently. "Only to someone who knows you." For the next 20 minutes, I told her everything. Ryan's late nights, the secret phone calls, the messages, the distance growing between us. When I finished, Evelyn was quiet for a moment. Then she asked, "Have you talked to him honestly?" "I've tried." "And?" "He always says everything is fine." Evelyn nodded slowly. Sometimes people hide things because they want to protect the people they love, or because they're doing something wrong. Evelyn looked at me. "Maybe, but don't assume the worst before you know the truth." Her words stayed with me as I walked home. Don't assume the worst before you know the truth. I wanted to believe that. I truly did. But 2 nights later, everything became even more suspicious. Ryan was taking a shower when his phone lit up on the kitchen counter. I was not trying to look, but the screen was facing upward. A message appeared. I only saw part of it. It said, "Have you told her yet?" My heart nearly stopped. Told me what? The bathroom door opened before I could think any further. Ryan walked into the kitchen. When he saw the message, his face changed instantly. He grabbed the phone and slipped it into his pocket. That night, I barely slept. The words repeated in my mind over and over. "Have you told her yet?" The next morning, Ryan left early for work. After he was gone, I sat alone at the kitchen table staring at my coffee. I could not continue living with questions. I needed answers. That evening, when Ryan came home, I decided to confront him. As soon as he entered the apartment, I looked directly at him. "We need to talk." He froze. The color drained slightly from his face. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then Ryan slowly placed his keys on the table. "Okay," he said quietly. I took a deep breath. "What are you hiding from me?" Ryan looked away. "Amanda." "No," I shook my head. "Please don't tell me everything is fine." The room became silent. Ryan rubbed his forehead. Then he sat down. His shoulders looked heavy, exhausted, defeated. Finally he spoke. "There is something I haven't told you." My heart pounded. The moment I had feared was finally here. I sat across from him and waited. Ryan stared at the floor for several seconds. Then he looked up. His eyes were filled with sadness, and in that moment I knew whatever he was about to say would change our lives forever. "I've been seeing doctors for the last 3 months." For a moment I didn't understand. "Doctors?" Ryan nodded. I felt cold. "What do you mean?" He swallowed hard. "A few months ago, I started getting severe headaches." I stared at him. He continued quietly. "Then I started feeling dizzy." My hands began shaking. I thought it was stress at first, but it kept getting worse. The room suddenly felt smaller, much smaller. Ryan looked down, so I went to see a specialist. I could barely breathe. "What did they find?" Ryan closed his eyes, and when he opened them again, I saw tears. "The doctors found a tumor." My entire world stopped. I could hear my heartbeat. Nothing else, just my heartbeat. "No," I whispered. Ryan's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know how to tell you." I stared at him in disbelief. All those weeks, all those secrets, all those late nights, the phone calls, the messages, the fear. It had never been another woman. It had never been betrayal. It had been something far worse. And as Ryan reached across the table and took my trembling hand, I realized the secret he had been carrying alone was about to break both of our hearts. For several seconds, I could not speak. The room felt completely silent. Outside, I could hear distant traffic and the sound of a dog barking somewhere down the street. But inside our apartment, everything seemed frozen. I stared at Ryan. A tumor. The word echoed through my mind again and again. I wanted to tell myself I had misunderstood. I wanted to believe there had been some mistake, but the tears in Ryan's eyes told me otherwise. "When?" I finally whispered. Ryan looked down at our hands. 3 months ago. My heart sank. 3 months? For 3 months he had been carrying this burden alone. For 3 months? I repeated. Ryan nodded slowly. I felt tears filling my own eyes. Why didn't you tell me? His voice broke. Because I was scared. I had never seen Ryan look so vulnerable before. He was always the strong one, the calm one, the man who fixed problems, the man who reassured me when life became difficult. But now he looked exhausted, like someone who had been fighting a battle completely alone. I didn't know what to do, he admitted. The doctors needed more tests. They weren't sure how serious it was. I kept thinking that if I waited a little longer, maybe I would have better news. I wiped a tear from my cheek. And the phone calls? The hospital. The messages? The hospital. My doctors, my case manager. Suddenly, everything made sense. The late nights, the secret meetings, the worried expressions, the private conversations. I felt ashamed for some of the things I had imagined, yet another feeling was growing inside me too. Pain, deep pain, because Ryan had suffered through all of this alone. What did the doctors say? I asked quietly. Ryan took a deep breath. They found the tumor early. I immediately held on to those words, early. That sounded hopeful. But, he continued, the word made my stomach tighten. But what? Ryan hesitated. They believe treatment can help. Can help. Not cure. Help. I noticed the difference immediately. My fear returned. What kind of treatment? A specialized treatment program. I swallowed hard. Will it work? Ryan stared at the table. We don't know. His answer hurt more than I expected. Not knowing can sometimes feel worse than hearing bad news. Because uncertainty leaves room for every possible fear. For a long time, neither of us spoke. Finally, I moved closer and wrapped my arms around him. Ryan immediately began crying. Not loudly, not dramatically, just quietly. The kind of crying that comes after holding in fear for far too long. I held him tightly, and for the first time in 3 months, he wasn't carrying the burden alone anymore. The following weeks were some of the hardest weeks of our lives. Ryan began attending appointments regularly. Sometimes I went with him. Sometimes he preferred to go alone. The hospital was located across the city. Every visit seemed to bring new information, new questions, and new decisions. One afternoon, after a long appointment, Ryan came home looking more thoughtful than usual. We sat together in the living room. He stared out the window for several minutes before speaking. The company offered me a promotion. I blinked. A promotion? Ryan nodded. It's a major position. I was confused. That's good news, isn't it? He didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked away. Maybe. Something in his voice worried me. Ryan? He took a deep breath. The position is in another city. Suddenly, I understood. The same city he had mentioned weeks earlier. The city near the coast. The city that required us to move. I sat quietly. What happens if you accept? The salary would almost double. That was a lot of money, more money than we had ever earned before. It could help with medical expenses. It could help secure our future. It sounded like exactly the opportunity we needed, but Ryan still looked troubled. What happens if you don't accept? Ryan rubbed his forehead. The opportunity disappears. I waited. I knew there was more. There is something else. What? Ryan looked directly at me. The treatment program. I felt my chest tighten. What about it? The program is here. Suddenly, everything became clear. The promotion was in another city. The treatment was here. He could not have both. One path offered financial security. The other offered the best medical care. For the first time, I understood why Ryan had looked so afraid. He wasn't choosing between two jobs, he was choosing between two futures. Over the next several days, Ryan became even quieter. Every evening, he sat by the window deep in thought. Sometimes I found him awake in the middle of the night. Sometimes he stood alone on the balcony, looking at the stars. I knew he was thinking about the decision, his final choice. One afternoon, I came home from work and found him sitting at the kitchen table. Several papers were spread out in front of him: job information, medical documents, financial estimates, apartment listings. Everything was there. Two completely different futures. Ryan looked exhausted. "Have you decided?" I asked. He shook his head. "No." I sat beside him. "You don't have to figure everything out today." "I know," but he still looked overwhelmed. For the next week, life felt suspended. Neither of us knew what would happen. Neither of us knew what Ryan would choose. Then one evening, something unexpected happened. We were having dinner when Ryan suddenly spoke. "I visited the coastal city today." I looked up. "You did?" He nodded. "The company paid for the trip." "What was it like?" Ryan smiled slightly. "Beautiful." His smile faded. "The office is incredible." I remained silent. The position would be a huge step forward for my career. I could hear the conflict in his voice. Part of him wanted the opportunity, part of him feared what he might lose. That night, after Ryan went to bed, I stayed awake for a long time. I thought about our marriage, I thought about our future, and I thought about something important. For weeks, I had been asking the wrong question. The question was never whether Ryan would leave me. The question was whether Ryan would choose himself. For years, Ryan had always put other people first: his coworkers, his friends, his family, me. Maybe now it was time for him to choose what truly mattered. 3 days later, Ryan received another phone call. When he ended the call, he looked strangely calm, different, almost peaceful. I immediately noticed the change. "What happened?" I asked. Ryan smiled softly. "The company needs my answer tomorrow." My heart skipped a beat. Tomorrow? After weeks of uncertainty, the decision had finally arrived. That evening, we took a long walk through the neighborhood. The sun was setting. The sky was painted orange and gold. Children were playing in the park. People walked their dogs. Life continued normally around us, yet for us, everything felt different. As we walked, Ryan suddenly stopped. He looked toward the horizon. Then he turned toward me. "Amanda?" "Yes?" "I need to tell you something." I waited. Ryan smiled sadly. "For weeks, everyone thinks I've been deciding between a job and treatment." I frowned. "Haven't you?" He shook his head. "No." I looked at him confused. "Then what have you really been deciding?" Ryan took a deep breath, and the answer he gave would stay with me forever. "I've been deciding how I want to spend the rest of my life." I felt tears immediately filling my eyes. Ryan continued softly. "When the doctors first told me about the tumor, I became obsessed with success." His voice was calm. "I thought more money would solve everything." He looked toward the fading sunset. "I thought a bigger salary would protect us." I squeezed his hand. But then something happened. "What?" Ryan smiled. "I started paying attention." "To what?" He looked at me. "To everything. The children laughing in the park, the old couple holding hands across the street, the sunsets, the mornings, the simple moments we share together." Ryan's eyes became emotional, and I realized something. "What?" "A bigger house means nothing if I don't have time to enjoy it with the people I love." Tears rolled down my cheeks. Ryan smiled gently. "The promotion isn't my final choice." I stared at him. "It isn't?" He shook his head. "My final choice is how I want to live." The evening breeze moved softly around us. Ryan continued, "I'm choosing treatment." A sob escaped my throat. Ryan pulled me into his arms. "I'm choosing hope." I held him tightly. "I'm choosing time." My tears soaked his shirt. "And most importantly," he whispered, "I'm choosing us." For a long moment, neither of us moved. We simply stood together beneath the evening sky. The fear was still there. The uncertainty was still there. But something had changed. The secret was gone. The burden was shared. The future remained unknown. Yet, for the first time in months, we were facing it together. As we slowly walked home, Ryan reached for my hand. His grip felt stronger than it had in weeks. Maybe because he had finally stopped carrying everything alone. Maybe because his final choice had never really been about a job. It had been about life itself. And for the first time since this nightmare began, I understood the truth. I thought my husband was leaving me, but he wasn't. He was fighting for every extra day he could spend beside me, and that truth broke my heart. Yet at the same time, it reminded me how precious every moment truly is. As we walked home that evening, neither of us spoke very much. We didn't need to. For weeks, fear and uncertainty had built a wall between us. Now that wall was finally beginning to disappear. Ryan held my hand the entire way home. His grip was warm and steady. For the first time in months, I felt like we were moving in the same direction again. When we reached our apartment, the city lights were beginning to shine through the darkness. Cars passed below our window, and somewhere in the distance, music drifted through the evening air. Everything looked normal, yet our lives had changed forever. That night, we sat together on the couch. The television was off. Our phones were silent. There were no distractions. Only honesty, only truth. Ryan explained everything the doctors had told him. The tumor was serious, but there was still hope. The treatment would not be easy. There would be difficult days. There would be side effects. There would be uncertainty. But there would also be a chance, a real chance. As I listened, I realized something important. For weeks, I had been afraid of losing Ryan, but Ryan had been living with that fear every single day, alone. The thought broke my heart. I moved closer to him. "Promise me something." Ryan looked at me. "What?" "No more secrets." A small smile appeared on his face. "No more secrets. Even if you're scared." He nodded. "Even if I'm scared." I reached for his hand. "We face this together." Ryan squeezed my fingers. "Together." The next morning, Ryan called his company. He thanked them for the opportunity. Then he declined the promotion. When the call ended, he looked strangely peaceful, almost relieved, as if a heavy weight had finally been lifted from his shoulders. A few days later, treatment began. The hospital became part of our new routine. Some mornings we arrived before sunrise. Other days we spent hours waiting for appointments. The nurses quickly learned our names. The doctors answered countless questions. And slowly we learned how to live one day at a time. At first, Ryan tried to remain positive. He joked with the nurses. He smiled at other patients. He told everyone he was fine. But treatment is not easy. After several weeks, the side effects became stronger. Ryan became tired more often. Sometimes he slept most of the afternoon. Sometimes he struggled to finish simple tasks. One evening, I found him sitting alone in the living room. The lights were off. The room was dark except for the glow of the street lights outside. "Ryan?" He looked up. His eyes were full of frustration. "I'm tired of being tired." My heart ached. I sat beside him. For a moment, neither of us spoke. Then he shook his head. "I used to solve problems." "You still do?" "No." His voice was quiet. "I feel helpless." I understood what he meant. Ryan had always been strong, independent, reliable. Now he needed help, and accepting that was difficult for him. I wrapped my arm around his shoulders. "You don't have to carry everything." He laughed softly. "You sound like me." Maybe I've been listening. For the first time that evening, he smiled. A real smile. Small, but real. As the months passed, life became a mixture of good days and bad days. Some appointments brought encouraging news. Others brought disappointment. Some mornings Ryan felt energetic. Other mornings he barely wanted to leave bed. During the difficult days, I often remembered something Evelyn once told me. Hope isn't pretending everything is perfect. Hope is choosing to keep moving forward when things are difficult. Those words became our guide. Whenever fear appeared, we kept moving forward. Whenever uncertainty appeared, we kept moving forward, step by step, day by day. One afternoon, several months after treatment began, Ryan received a phone call from his doctor. The moment he answered, I knew something was different. His expression changed. His eyes widened slightly. Then he listened quietly. When the call ended, he stared at the phone. I felt my stomach tighten. What happened? Ryan looked at me. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then a smile slowly appeared, a smile I had not seen in a very long time. The scans. My heart pounded. What about them? Ryan's eyes filled with tears. The tumor is shrinking. For a second, I simply stared at him. Then tears rushed into my eyes. What? He laughed through his tears. The treatment is working. I threw my arms around him. Neither of us cared that we were crying. Neither of us cared that we were standing in the middle of the kitchen. At that moment, nothing else mattered. There was still a long road ahead, the doctors made that very clear. But for the first time, the future felt brighter. For the first time, hope felt real. That evening, we celebrated with takeout food from our favorite restaurant. It wasn't a fancy celebration, but it didn't need to be. We sat by the window, looking out at the park, the same park we had watched for years. Children laughed, dogs chased balls, people walked home from work. Ordinary life, beautiful life. Ryan looked at me. You know something? What? I'm glad I didn't take the promotion. I smiled. Me too. He leaned back in his chair. A few months ago, I thought success meant earning more money. He shook his head. I was wrong. I listened quietly. Ryan looked out the window. Success is being here. His voice was calm. Success is getting another day with the people you love. I reached across the table and held his hand. The following year passed slowly. Treatment continued, appointments continued, life continued. There were still challenges, still moments of fear, still moments when uncertainty returned. But there were also birthdays, anniversaries, family dinners, walks in the park, movie nights on the couch, simple moments that once seemed ordinary. Now they felt priceless. One warm spring afternoon, nearly 18 months after Ryan's diagnosis, we visited the hospital for another checkup. By then, we knew the routine well: the waiting room, the tests, the long wait for results. When the doctor finally entered the room, he was smiling. A good sign, very good sign. Ryan and I exchanged nervous glances. Then the doctor spoke. The results look excellent. Neither of us moved. The doctor continued. The tumor has responded better than we expected. My heart felt ready to burst. Ryan stared at him. What does that mean? The doctor smiled. It means your prognosis is very encouraging. I immediately grabbed Ryan's hand. His eyes filled with tears. Mine did too. The journey wasn't completely over, but we had come farther than either of us had imagined. Much farther. That evening, we returned home and sat together on the balcony as the sun began to set. The sky was painted with shades of gold, pink, and orange. For a long time, we simply watched in silence. Then Ryan spoke. Do you remember what you thought when all of this started? I laughed softly. Unfortunately, yes. He smiled. You thought I was leaving you? I shook my head. I was convinced. Ryan laughed. So was I. I looked at him. What? He nodded. When I started hiding things, I knew how it looked. I smiled through my tears. You drove me crazy. I know. We both laughed. Then the laughter faded. Ryan looked toward the horizon. You know what scares me most now? What? Not appreciating life. I understood exactly what he meant. After facing the possibility of losing everything, the small things no longer felt small. Every sunrise mattered. Every conversation mattered. Every ordinary day mattered. Ryan turned toward me. If I learned anything from this experience, it's that tomorrow is never guaranteed. I nodded. That's true. So we should stop waiting for the perfect moment. I smiled. What are you suggesting? Ryan grinned. I think we should finally take that vacation we've been talking about for years. I laughed. The one by the ocean? The one by the ocean. For years, we had postponed that trip. There was always another responsibility, another expense, another reason to wait. Maybe it was time to stop waiting. Maybe life was happening right now. Several months later, we stood together on a quiet beach. Ocean waves rolled gently onto the sand. The sky stretched endlessly above us. Ryan slipped his hand into mine. Neither of us said anything for a while. We simply listened to the water. Then he smiled. This is nice. I smiled back. Very nice. As I looked at the ocean, I thought about everything we had survived. The fear, the uncertainty, the secrets, the difficult choices. And I realized something important. The hardest moments of our lives had also taught us the most valuable lessons. Love is not about never facing problems. Marriage is not about avoiding fear. Life is not about controlling the future. Sometimes the greatest strength comes from facing uncertainty together. Sometimes the bravest choice is choosing hope. And sometimes the most important decision a person can make is deciding how they want to spend the time they have. Ryan's final choice had never been about a promotion. It had never been about money. It had never been about success. His final choice was choosing life, choosing hope, choosing love, choosing us. And standing there beside him, watching the waves reach the shore, I knew one thing for certain. No matter what happened in the future, we would face it together, just as we always should have. Thank you for listening to this story. If you enjoyed this emotional English story and want to improve your English through simple and meaningful stories, please support Tale Talk English. Please like, comment, and subscribe so you never miss a new story. And remember, the best way to learn English is to listen, understand, and enjoy the story. See you in the next story.